Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 8 college football rankings. So going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 7. Last week at number 10, I had Texas, they were on a bye. 9 was USC, they were demolished by Notre Dame losing 48-20. 8 was Oklahoma, they were on a bye. 7 was Oregon, they lost to Washington 36-33. 6 was Washington, they beat Oregon 36-33. 5 was Penn State, they rolled past UMass winning 63-0. 4 was Ohio State, they easily beat Purdue by a score of 41-7. 3 was Florida State, they destroyed Syracuse winning 41-3. 2 was Michigan, they dominated Indiana 52-7. And 1 was Georgia, who beat Vanderbilt by a score of 37-20. So this week's rankings at number 10, I've got North Carolina. So North Carolina enters my rankings at number 10, which is really just a direct result of USC losing and falling out of the top 10. But North Carolina is now 6-0, they're coming off a 41-31 win over Miami. They were great offensively, Drake May threw for 273 yards and 4 touchdowns. North Carolina as a team ran for 235 yards. And also Tez Walker, who's playing in his second game after the NCAA reversed their decision on his eligibility. He had a huge game with 6 catches for 132 yards and 3 touchdowns. But North Carolina picks up a big win over Miami. They enter my rankings at number 10. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, why not Alabama? They have to be close to the top 10. They're probably at 11 right now, but Alabama is not a top 10 team. They do not deserve to be a top 10 team. They just beat Arkansas by 3. They're not a top 10 team. They're still overrated, and North Carolina is my team at number 10. Coming in at number 9, we've got Texas. They move up to 9, which is just a direct result of USC's loss to Notre Dame. Texas did not play. They enter at 9. Next week, they face Houston. 8, we've got Oregon. So, Oregon's a tough team to rank because I had them at 7. I'm only moving them down 1 spot. You could argue that's not enough, but I don't think Oregon should be penalized that much. They went on the road and played a really good Washington team. They played a great game that came down to the wire and probably should have went to overtime had their kicker made the game-tying field goal as time expired. But it was a great performance from Oregon, even though they ended up getting the loss. But I'm only dropping them 1 spot. They played very well. Bo Nix was good with 377 yards and 2 touchdowns. They ran for 204 yards as a team on 5.1 yards a carry. And star wide receiver Troy Franklin had a huge game with 8 catches for 154 yards and a touchdown. But despite the loss, Oregon still comfortably in the top 10 at number 8. Number 7, we've got Oklahoma. So they move up 1 spot, which is just Oregon moving down. I'm switching Oklahoma and Oregon. Oklahoma didn't play. They check in at 7. Next week, they host UCF. Coming in at number 6, we've got Penn State. So they did what was expected in destroying UMass 63-0. That is their second 60-point game of the season. Their defense was insane, obviously shutting out UMass, but also only allowing 109 total yards. Then you look to offense for Penn State. They were great, especially on the ground. 246 yards on 6.6 yards a carry, and also 4 rushing touchdowns. Plus, Penn State also had 2 punt return touchdowns. There's not a whole ton to say about Penn State. They had a huge win over UMass, demolishing a bad opponent, and they have a huge matchup next week when they visit Ohio State. They check in at number 6. Number 5 is Ohio State. So I've got them sliding down 1 spot because of Washington's win. So Ohio State was great in their 41-7 win over Purdue. They did a great job of not looking ahead to next week when they host Penn State. Kyle McCord was great, 276 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, Ohio State couldn't really run the football, even though they ended up with 152 yards, but they had just 3.9 yards a carry. And they're definitely going to need to be able to run the football next week against Penn State. But Ohio State's defense was great once again. They fall down 1 spot as a result of Washington moving up. But we'll see if Ohio State can re-enter the top 4 next week when they face Penn State. Coming in at number 4, we've got Florida State. They dropped down 1 spot, which is a result of Washington moving up. But Florida State dominated Syracuse, winning 41-3. Offensively, they were great. They threw for 334 yards and ran for 191 yards and 3 touchdowns on 5.6 yards a carry. They were without 1-star receiver, Johnny Wilson, so their other superstar receiver, Keon Coleman, had a huge game as he finished with 9 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown. And the Florida State defense was great, holding Syracuse to just 3.4 yards a carry and 3 points. Florida State enters at 4. I could see the argument for having a Florida State above Washington, or even Ohio State above Florida State, but I've got Florida State at number 4. Coming in at number 3, we've got Washington. So they move up to number 3 following their huge win over Oregon, 36-33. The offense was insane against a great Oregon defense, and Michael Penix Jr. is now easily the Heisman frontrunner after Washington's big win, and also Caleb Williams had a terrible game against Notre Dame as he threw 3 picks. But Penix was great as he threw for 302 yards and 4 touchdowns, and receiving for Washington, Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk both had monster games. Odunze, 8 catches for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown, and Jalen Polk, 6 catches for 118 yards and a score. Now, I have Washington at 3, but I think Washington is the best team in the country, and they should be number 1, but you can't put them at number 1 or even number 2 because Georgia or Michigan hasn't done anything to fall from the top 2 spots. But Washington, I think they're the best team in the country. They play Arizona State next week. They come in at number 3 after a big win over Oregon. Number 2, we've got Michigan. So they were dominant in their win over Indiana, winning 52-7. Their defense was great, holding Indiana to just 7 points and forcing 4 turnovers. Offensively, they were great, putting up 52 points. They threw for 4 touchdowns, ran in for 3. And Michigan, with another win, even though they have the easiest schedule in the world, they check in at number 2. Next week, they face their rival, Michigan State. And number 1, we've got Georgia. So they had another win that was a lot closer than it should have been, only beating Vanderbilt 37-20. The offense was good. Carson Beck had a pretty good game, 261 yards and a touchdown and a pick. But they were dominant on the ground as they ran for 291 yards and 3 touchdowns on 7.5 yards per carry. Now, star tight end Brock Bowers did leave the game with an ankle injury, so that is not good news. But the good news is they have a bye week next week, so he'll have time to heal up before they face Florida the following week. And my updated college football playoff predictions, I changed things around a little bit. 1, I've got Washington 13-0 Pac-12 champ. 2, Michigan 13-0 Big Ten champ. 3, Florida State 13-0 ACC champ. And 4 is tough, but I've got Georgia 12-1 SEC champion. Now, you could say it's a bit unrealistic to have 3 undefeated teams, but I've got Washington moving up to 1 in my playoff predictions. Originally, I had them at 4 at 12-1, but I've got Washington at 1. As I said a couple minutes ago, I think they're the best team in the country. I think Oregon is going to be the best team they play, at least in the regular season. They've still got tough teams on the schedule, and they play a really tough 4-game stretch to close out the season when they visit USC, then host Utah, go to Oregon State, and then host Washington State. So that is a really tough stretch to close out the season. So it won't be easy for Washington there, but I think Oregon is the best and most complete team Washington will face, at least in the regular season. I've got Washington winning out. I think, as I said, they're the best team in the country, and they play in what I think is the best conference in the country. And with that schedule, there's no way they go undefeated and are at number 1. 2 and 3, Michigan and Florida State, they're self-explanatory. I've got them winning out and winning their conference. And then 4 is Georgia. So I don't trust them. I think they're overrated. I think they're going to lose a game this season. And I don't know who that is to. It could be to Tennessee, Ole Miss, somebody else. But I think Georgia drops the game, finishes 12-1, ends up winning the SEC, and they still get into the playoff. But the 4th spot is difficult between a 12-1 Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma. So the playoff picture is going to be wild this season, but I'm giving the 4th spot to Georgia right now because there's no way a 1-loss SEC champion is not getting in. But those are my Week 8 college football rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications so miss if you're uploading videos. I do my best to post as often as possible. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my rankings, disagree, and why. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.